Welcome to the Bible, your Biography Podcast. I'm Lynna K Teer, spiritual mentor and teacher. This podcast is devoted to uncovering the hidden psychological and mystical structure of Scripture. Here we explore the Bible, not as history, not as doctrine, and not as external theology, but a sacred symbolism revealing the pattern unfolding within man. Through the interpretive lens of Neville Goddard and lived spiritual experience, I examine names, numbers, generations, dreams, and prophetic imagery as states of consciousness. The Bible is not about someone else, it is about you. When I speak of the pattern man, I'm not describing a poetic metaphor. I'm describing internal architecture. Scripture is constructed with precision because consciousness unfolds with precision. Nothing in the Bible is arbitrary. Names are not accidental. Numbers and events are not random. Each element corresponds to structural shifts within awareness. The pattern unfolds through phases: unconscious identification, fragmented perception, moral struggle, faith stabilization, heart refinement, identity recognition, and integration. The movement is sequential. It is not possible to bypass early stages. It is not possible to leap from Adam to Revelation. The pattern requires descent before ascent. Many modern spiritual teachings attempt to shortcut this process. They encourage immediate identity claims within inner restructuring. But Scripture reveals something more sober and more exact. Awakening is not an affirmation. It is a structural maturation of consciousness. After Genesis establishes the beginning of awareness and the fragmentation of identity, Exodus introduces movement. Egypt symbolizes psychological bondage. Bondage does not mean oppression by external rulers. It means identification with conditioned belief. When consciousness forgets its origin, it becomes enslaved to reaction. Pharaoh represents rigid identity. Moses represents emerging awareness. The plagues represent destabilization of entrenched assumptions. Exodus is not a political event. It is an internal revolt. Consciousness begins to question the structures it once obeyed without reflection. This stage is uncomfortable. It is disruptive. It dismantles familiarity. The Red Sea crossing symbolizes the irreversible threshold between unconscious reaction and deliberate awareness. Water throughout Scripture symbolizes consciousness itself. To pass through water is to pass through transformation. But liberation does not equal stabilization. After Exodus comes wilderness. The wilderness stage is essential. It represents instability between identities. Old structures have collapsed. New identity has not yet solidified. This is where many seekers become discouraged. They mistake wilderness for failure. But wilderness is restructuring. In this phase, old reactions resurface. Doubt intensifies. Identity feels uncertain. Desire fluctuates. The pattern man cannot stabilize prematurely. 40 years in the wilderness symbolizes psychological testing and refinement. 40 in Scripture indicates transition through difficulty. It is the period in which identity is purified of dependency. Wilderness is not punishment. It is preparation. The giving of the law at Sinai marks another structural shift. The law is not a moral burden. It is a mirror. The commandments reveal how assumption generates consequence. Neville repeatedly emphasized that life reflects state, meaning your state of consciousness. The law, mystically understood, demonstrates this principle. When consciousness acts from fear, experience reflects fear. When consciousness acts from love, experience reflects harmony. The law externalizes causation so that awareness can observe its own mechanics. But the law does not complete the pattern. It explains how life operates. It does not reveal who operates it. The prophets emerge during periods of deviation. They do not predict external catastrophe. They articulate internal misalignment. Prophetic voice represents conscious awakened. When awareness drifts into unconscious reaction, the inner voice calls it back. Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, these figures represent phases where consciousness becomes aware of its own distortion. Prophecy is not about forecasting events. It is about correcting identity. The pattern man must confront the consequences of misidentification before recognition can occur. Babylon symbolizes confusion. Exile represents the collapse of borrowed identity. At this stage, consciousness realizes that external structure cannot provide permanent security. Temples fall, cities collapse, certainty dissolves. But what collapses is not truth, it is attachment. Exile strips away dependence on outer validation. Only then can inner authority emerge. After exile comes rebuilding. But the second temple is different from the first. This indicates refinement. When identity stabilizes after collapse, it does not return to naivety. It returns with awareness. This stage marks psychological maturity. The pattern man is no longer unconscious. He has endured fragmentation, struggle, consequence, and refinement. Now awareness prepares for recognition. When we arrive at the New Testament, the language changes. The focus narrows. The narrative intensifies. The birth of Christ is not an astronomical event. It is the birth of awareness within consciousness. Mary represents receptivity. Joseph represents discipline, protection of emerging identity. Bethlehem represents humility. The divine identity does not appear in spectacle. It appears quietly within. Awakening is not dramatic, it is intimate. Even after recognition begins, temptation follows. Temptation symbolizes the testing of newly emerging identity. Can awareness remain aligned when offered power, validation, or control? The temptation narrative reveals that awakened identity must reject egoic reinforcement. Power without recognition corrupts. Recognition without humility destabilizes. The pattern requires equilibrium. The crucifixion is the most misunderstood symbol in Scripture. It is not divine punishment. It is psychological surrender. The cross represents intersection between human identity and divine awareness. To be crucified is to allow false identity to dissolve. This is not self-hatred. It is misidentification ending. When the false self collapses, fear collapses with it. Resurrection is not resurrection. It is recognition that identity was never confined to form. The tomb symbolizes the subconscious. The tomb rolled away symbolizes removal of limitation. Resurrection reveals permanence beyond condition. It is not escape from the body. It is awareness within the body. Ascension does not mean departure. It symbolizes integration. The awakened identity no longer fluctuates with circumstance. Heaven and earth are reconciled. Spirit and form are unified. The pattern completes not in transcendence, but embodiment. Revelation concludes with a city. A city represents structured awareness. Walls indicate stability. Gates indicate accessibility. Foundation stones indicate layered understanding. The New Jerusalem descending from heaven symbolizes higher awareness integrated into lived reality. The pattern man does not escape the world. He inhabits it consciously. This structure is not abstract theology. It describes your psychological development. You have known Genesis. You have experienced wilderness. You have felt exile. You have wrestled with law. You have stabilized faith. You have refined love. At that moment, you have glimpsed recognition. Scripture is not asking you to imitate characters. It is revealing the stages you move through inevitably. Awakening is not rare. It is not reserved. It is structural. Consciousness cannot remain fragmented indefinitely. States exhaust themselves. Identities lose coherence. External achievements fail to satisfy. Eventually, awareness asks a deeper question. Who am I? That question marks a turning point in the pattern. Pause for a moment. Consider your own life. Where are you within the pattern? Are you in the wilderness? Are you rebuilding? Are you stabilizing faith? Are you refining love? Are you confronting exile? There is no condemnation within this structure, only progression. The pattern unfolds at its own pace. From Genesis to Revelation, the pattern man awakens. He does not accumulate knowledge. He remembers identity. He does not become divine. He recognizes he has always been. Scripture does not ask for worship of an external being. It reveals the awakening of awareness within. The Alpha and the Omega are not distant symbols. They are the beginning and completion of recognition within you. As we continue in future episodes, I'll slow things down further. I'll continue to examine specific books individually, to analyze the numbers mentioned in Scripture, to explore generational symbolism, and to clarify the distinction between the law and the promise with precision. But for now, hold this foundation firmly. The Bible is not history. It is autobiography. The pattern is exact. The stages are structured. The awakening is internal. And the awareness listening right now is not outside of the story. It is the one through whom the pattern unfolds. I will see you in the next episode.